Alright guys, and here on our news it says software developer connects the dots between XRP and Donald Trump. Now, think about the timing of the SEC's lawsuit against Ripple back on December 2020. Have you ever wondered why Jay Clayton slapped Ripple with that massive lawsuit on his final days in office, only for him to return years later in one of the most powerful positions in the entire government? What if that legal battle wasn't an attempt to destroy XRP, but rather a calculated move to put the asset on ice until the political landscape shifted? So, I look at the big picture, and today we are diving deep into a fury that connects software developers, intelligence appointments, and the highest levels of American politics. We are analyzing the dots being connected across the crypto community regarding Jay Clayton's confirmation as the 9th Director of National Intelligence in a 51-47 Senate vote. So, is it possible that Donald Trump and his inner circle orchestrated a multi-year hold on XRP's regulatory trajectory? So let's break down the evidence and evaluate what this means for the market. So, did Donald Trump put XRP on ice until his political return? Software engineer Vincent Van Code right here offered a fresh perspective here on X, questioning whether former President Donald Trump before effectively placed XRP in a deep freeze until his return to power today. So Van Code highlighted that Jay Clayton, whom he described as Trump's boy, would never have authorized the SEC lawsuit against Ripple without Trump's backing. He noted that this entire setup feels like a strategic timeline playing out over several years. Now, here's my opinion. While Van Code clearly framed this as a thought experiment rather than proven fact, the logic demands attention. Look at how institutional adoption works. Big capital does not enter volatile, unregulated environments. By placing Ripple in a high-profile legal battle during a transitional period, the asset was effectively kept on standby, while the underlying infrastructure quietly developed behind the scenes. It prevented premature offshore monopolization of the technology. Rather than viewing the lawsuit as a death sentence, it can be viewed as a tactical hold that ensured the regulatory frame would be built strictly on American terms when the timing was right. Now, was Jay Clayton's intelligence role as a reward for the SEC strategy? Adding to that perspective, investor Hasher.Group weighed in on X following Bank XRP's report on Clayton's confirmation. The investor suggested that Clayton's brand new position overseeing 18 agencies in the U.S. intelligence community could be seen as a reward for dropping the SEC's aggressive stance on managing the litigation playbook. Hasher.Group noted that unseen forces may have been guiding the XRP Ledger toward its intended destination all along. Now, here's my opinion. When you look at high-level government appointments, coincidence is rarely the driving force. Clayton transitioned from financial oversight at the SEC to serving as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. And now he is sitting atop the entire intelligence apparatus. That is a meteoric rise across completely different sectors of public power. So to me, this demonstrates that his action during his tenure at the SEC were completely aligned with broader executive strategies. Now, if the goal was to control the timeline of digital asset dominance until the legal and national security frameworks were fully aligned, placing a trusted operator like Clayton in charge of national intelligence makes total sense. Now, how far back do Ripple's US government connections actually go? To support the idea of a long-term government blueprint, Hasher the group pointed to historical statements regarding Greg Kidd. The investor recalled that Ripple secured an official meeting with the U.S. Treasury within its very first month of operating. This early engagement shows that Ripple was establishing high-level relationships with government institutions right from its inception. Now, here's my opinion. This historical detail is crucial because it completely debunks the idea that Ripple was ever an outsider rogue startup trying to subvert the global financial system. A company meeting with the US Treasury within 30 days of launching is not standard startup behavior. It signals early strategic alignment. If the government knew that what Ripple was building over a decade ago, the subsequent legal friction under Clayton's SEC looks less like an attempt to stop the technology and more like a controlled entry ramp. The early regulatory dialogue proves that federal agencies understood the power of the XRP Ledger long before the public ever caught. Now, why does Clayton's promotion renew national interest in XRP? Jay Clayton's confirmation as Director of National Intelligence has reignited intense debate throughout the cryptocurrency sector. Because he signed off on the landmark December 2020 lawsuit against Ripple right before stepping down, his elevation to overseeing the nation's core security agencies forces everyone to re-examine the legal battle through a geopolitical lens. Now, here's my opinion. Financial rails are no longer just economic infrastructure. They are matters of national security. With cross-border payments, central bank digital currencies, and settlement networks defining the future of global power, digital assets fall squarely under the oversight of national intelligence. Having the very person who oversaw the regulatory freeze on XRP now leading national intelligence suggests that digital asset rails are being viewed as vital strategic infrastructure for the nation's future dominance. Alright, and finally, here is our overall conclusion. When you connect the narrative threads shared by market analysts and observers on X, a clear picture emerges. The idea that the SEC lawsuit was merely an isolated legal disagreement is becoming harder to maintain when viewed against the backdrop of long-term political cycles. So from Ripple's initial meetings with the Treasury in its first month to the abrupt legal hold initiated by Jay Clayton in late 2020 to its recent appointment as Director of National Intelligence, every step points toward a larger blueprint. Whether President Trump intentionally paused XRP or simply allowed a broader political timeline to unfold, the outcome remains the same. Where the groundwork has been laid, the legal hurdles have been systematically dismantled, and the key players are now positioned at the highest levels of government. So, watching these geopolitical dots connect provides a powerful framework for understanding where institutional finance and national security are headed next. Alright, and this finally ends our video. Thank you very much for watching and see you on the next one, or you might just as well check this next recommended video right here.